So just as a recap quickly of this afternoon, so of course we started off with the fabulous dev of the human plus machine, and the key being around, okay, we've got to be objective and also show people where to fish, but don't do the fishing for them type thing. There was something about fish in there anyway, wasn't there, Dev? So that was absolutely brilliant. And then we went and we started talking about satellites, for example. So it's a case here of saying, okay, where can we get a whole load of new data sets from? But then also we need to know what to do with those data sets to turn it into actionable intelligence. So it's about making decisions, and then also as well, perhaps using some of this data to hold people and different organizations to account as well. We then shifted gear again, and we went to Brazil, and that was a case there where we started talking about with Edson about third-party risk in the extended enterprise, which really brought home the fact that we have to make use of this external data, and we have to be able to stick it all together in order to be able to see what's going on. Also as well, where technology is really helping us, so things like contract management, actually that is something that perhaps we can get machines to do, thereby freeing up humans to be able to do something more interesting, perhaps with their time. Then we went from Brazil back to the UK, and Mike Tunstall, who spoke to us from from the context of a financial organization or a wealth management organization. And he told a story that I think most of us can identify with, which is, how on earth do I get people to actually use this risk management system? And do I actually build one from scratch? So again, this morning, we heard all about, okay, actually some of these tools and techniques are freely available. Do I need to be an expert in deep learning, etc., in order to be able to get them to work? Or how far can I perhaps take it? And is that good enough for my organization? So, and with all of that, of course, you were speaking about the example of they are using it to update their risk appetite statements, for example, and actually they've got much better engagement from their organization than perhaps might otherwise be the case. Then we decided to go back to Brazil, just, because we could in this wonderful virtual world. And we heard from the wonderful Enrique Plus team with regards to actually a whole load of, well, not just climatic data, a whole load of geospatial data sets that actually built quite nicely on what Dr. Gareth Morgan had been talking about from the satellite side of things. I took loads away from what Enrique was saying there. But again, it was about presenting the story and actually showing trustworthy information so that we can, again, hold our governments to account and say, okay, look, if we carry on burning down the Amazon rainforest, we're going to have a problem with regards to climate change, etc. He didn't quite say that, by the way. I have put words into his mouth just in case anybody is taking notes of this. Then we went from Brazil and we went to space, because we could, with the fabulous Mike Latomsky, and Mike talking about, okay, so risk management is all about communication. So it's a communication system. It's about connecting people and information together. So how do we do that? And how do we make sure we can see through the noise to what's truly important? Because when you're standing there looking at a rocket that's on its launch pads, that's a big decision to either say, yeah, go for launch, or no, let's just stop dead for the moment and delay it. Those are big decisions. And so how do you bring everything together with that? Of course, Mike was talking about 3D printing, and we'll come on to some of the best innovations a little bit later. But also he left us with that resounding message of keep it simple. So keep it simple, which was the same as what we heard this morning. And by simplicity, we don't mean dumb it down. We mean actually, how can you see what's important with regards to this risk management system that we're looking at here? And then finally, we ended up with the glorious Jane and Mark, who, yes, I do believe, Deepak, they are available for hire if you do want them as a double act. I believe that they have a number of other offerings in terms of the different sets that they can do, but I will leave you to discuss that with them offline later. And those wise words, so many messages came through there, Jane and Mark, so thank you for that. But the resounding theme is, we are humans. So we are humans, and so how do we therefore empower ourselves to be the best of ourselves, and so therefore create change in a human way, because we're not machines, and so we need to treat things in a slightly different way, perhaps. So that was my brief attempt at a summary of what we've heard this afternoon. I'm now going to go to our fabulous panel and just say, okay, what kind of thoughts did you guys have, or also as well, have you got any questions for Jane and Mark? So Catalin, perhaps if I come to yourself first. So Catalin being the secretary for the Innovation Special Interest Group for the IRM. Catalin, what are your thoughts? And then I'm going to come to our first speaker of this afternoon. I'm going to come to Dev. So Catalin, over to you.
No, I think you summarized it really well. And I thought I only participated in the afternoon, but I thought all the talks were really good. And for me, I mean, I work for a publishing company, so hearing how risk management is applied for construction and you know, oil companies, you know, with satellites, it just opens up a whole new world for me. So I think some of it went over my head, but I think I got most of it. But it was a real eye opener. One thing, Mike Latomsky's talk, one thing that sticks in my head was his story about the signal versus the noise. And I think, Sarah, you alluded to that, but I'm going to think of that going forward, you know, in terms of communication, making sure that there's a high signal to noise ratio, that you just don't just cut out the crap and just give the message. So that was really helpful. And then Mark and Jane, one thing I took away from your talk, from your skit, was, you know, putting things in a positive light. You know, not just saying, oh, we can't do this, it's too risky, or this bad stuff is going to happen. It's like, how can think optimistically and positively, how can we make it work? And then that's where risk management comes in, is how can we ensure that anything bad that could prevent us from doing it is mitigated. So
brilliant. Thank you for that, Catalin. That's fantastic. Dev, how about yourself? Any thoughts from you? And then we'll go to Clive.
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to the diversity of thoughts from all the speakers. I also apologize for my internet connection today. Some of the things that I guess, without repeating what you just said, Sarah, it's hard to beat the summary you just gave. But one of the things that I felt was really nice to see an opportunity for a thread to be drawn was if you reverse order and start with the wonderful skit that Jane and Mark did towards the end, and incorporate some of the other stories we started to hear in the middle, and perhaps with some of the morning session as well, around what is the future of risk management and where is it all going. You certainly won't hear the future of risk management is do more of what we're currently doing, and just go get more risk managers into the pot and throw them in and, you know, expect them to swim in there. There's certainly lots of threads and around data. There's a lot of thread around the use of tooling. There's a thread around how, I'm going to call it like being open-minded and accepting that there are regions of uncertainty, that there's noise. As a quick sidebar, the new Daniel Kahneman book, Noise, is a fantastic read for those that haven't read it already. But if you take all of those components together, right, it like starts to really form what does the future of this discipline look like, if you want to call risk a discipline. And the future is bright, right? It certainly, there's a tremendous market that needs the discipline to be upskilled. You can imagine what happens if you point it and make it a negative thing. Like, what happens if risk management just stays the way it is, and just, you know, conferences like this never happen and people never think forward about how they need to evolve as well. We could end up with a fairly gloomy outlook in the way many projects, whether it's space projects or the built environment projects, might turn out. So a real case for change, I think, across many of the talks is what I heard, and loved it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Dev. Clive, let's come to yourself. And obviously, I mean, Clive has the most phenomenal risk management experience, but also as well, I mean, so Catalin, from a sort of a retail originally perspective and then into publishing. Clive, I guess, from more of an insurance background, etc. Clive, what about thoughts from your end? And then we'll shift to a totally different sector and we'll go to Richard.
Thanks very much. Thanks. First of all, I'd just like to say how tremendously encouraged I am by all the work that you've done. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's a great sign of your energy. And I think it's really good for the IRM that you've got that. I didn't realise we had such great budding thespians, and we're going to make use of that, I'm sure. And we will definitely be doing that, Jane and Mark. I'm looking at you. And it just reminds me, going way back into the mists of time, I was the founding chairman of the Innovation Special Interest Group in 2004, I think it was. And so I'm pleased it's carried on. We did have, one of the first things we did was we ran a seminar session called Risk Management plus Opportunity equals ERM. And we were all about opportunity, about relentless positivity, and the stuff that sort of come out with Jane and Mark. I don't think at that time we had necessarily the digitization to allow us to see some of the interconnections that actually has been striking to me to come out of this whole day that I've been before my monitor, not taking my exercise, which isn't very good at all, is it? But I think the first insight is really the interconnectivity, and how the hell are we going to manage the interconnectivity? And we can only do that through data and data analysis and data management and the sort of stuff that complex nodes and stuff.
Greg
was.
To be honest, in the morning, just call them all Greg.
I was going to say Greg was talking about. I thought that was great. I do think we do need to learn, Dev, and not necessarily do the same things. And we all keep going on about risk registers. How useful are risk registers when they're so backward looking? I do think we need to probably have our students learn about risk registers because it's a founding principle, but maybe we ought to think about moving on from there. And the other thing is about how we communicate with the C-suite and how we get the message into the C-suite level, because it's really, really important that we do. And part of that, I'm going to give this plug now for the senior executive route. If there's any senior executives out there who are calling themselves a CRO and they haven't got, like Mark, a risk management post-nominal, then they ought to be coming to talk to us, because we can give them that and we can show them and demonstrate that they are risk professionals and they can talk to their C-suite in that way. That's my final plug, but having said that, I'm just blown away with all the work that you've been doing. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Clive. That's great. Richard, how about yourself? And then we'll go to Rodrigo.
I'll keep it short because of time and because everyone's so eloquently summarised things already. My main observation is what a powerful forum and conference this has been. This is an innovation conference, so not everyone's doing this stuff. So as a result, you can feel quite siloed and a bit alone in your thinking and the way you want to challenge the status quo. So to have such thoughtful and forward-thinking leaders give their time and share their ideas has been quite almost emotional for me and really inspirational. So that's one thing I'm taking out of it. I think the other main trend, we've talked about, augmented intelligence and things like that. For me, a lot of these trends are distilled into getting computers and technology to do what they're good at, so we can focus on the stuff that we as humans are good at. That is things like the human touch, it's risk culture and behavior, and ultimately decision making and taking action to manage risks. Because that's why we're here. We're not here solely to produce grass. We're here to produce grass so we do something about it. And I suppose, to carry on the space metaphor, the objective's the same. But the spaceship that we're using, we're using these tools to make it faster, safer, and hopefully to get us further than we've been able to get before.
Loving it, absolutely loving it, Richard. Thank you so much for that. So with all of this, I'm going to bring in Jane and Mark now as well, and actually do a loop back through all of our other panelists here. And so the big question that we're going to go around and just ask you with is, what do you think is either the biggest innovation that we've already seen and is being used, or the biggest innovation that is yet to come, i.e. we're into sci-fi world, that will help us improve our ability to manage risks? Okay, so we're looking for the biggest innovation, so be it digital, be it more technological, doesn't matter, and it can either be present or past, or thinking into the future. What do we reckon? And I'm going to go to Mark first, seeing as he has his microphone ready to go. So I'll go to Mark first, and then I'll go to Jane.
Thanks, Sarah. So I think personally that quantum computing, which was mentioned very briefly this morning, is going to have a transformative effect on lives of everybody around the world. And for those who aren't really familiar with the concept of quantum computing, it is such an exponential growth from where we currently are in our digital computing process. And I know we're still at the very formative stages of it. It's quite embryonic in the technology, but it is working, and it will be pushed through in the next decade or so to become such a force that risk managers really need to be both conscious of the risks it introduces into their organizations, such as all of our cryptography suddenly disappears. We've got no means of password protecting anything. Two, making full advantage and taking advantage of its capabilities to help us. I hate to think of predicting the future, but certainly forecasting what the potential futures may look like.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Jane, how about yourself? And then we'll go to Dev.
Well, I'm going to take Mark's quantum computing and use it for really understanding those complex connections, and then seeing how we might pull at one of those nodes or threads and put pressure on them, so that we've got a completely different way of stress testing. And again, going back to, I can't remember who it was who said it now. I think it was Gabe this morning said, it's not value at risk anymore, it's values at risk. And so if we can use quantum computing to really understand how things are connected and the effects that they might have on each other if we pull at various parts of it, we're going to be looking at stress testing in a completely different way. And I think then you're leaning into more, well, predictive scenarios. And of course, future is never certain, is it? As Mark said. So there we go. That's my peneth.
Spoken like a true risk manager, Jane. Thanks for that. Dev, let's come to yourself next, and then we will go to Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I won't state the obvious, given that I run a company that builds machine learning tools and AI tools. Mine is actually in the space of psychology. So while that might not sound like a new technical development, I do think that we as mankind and we as a profession will need to move. I'm most excited about how the psychology of risk management evolves and becomes more ubiquitous. So this is at the moment when a machine says something to you and when a human says something to you, we have very different emotional reactions to how we ingest new information. And I think with time, that empathy will change across the world, and we'll start to see that we as a risk management discipline will have a far greater impact because we are able to tap into the psychology of those that aren't professions, using all the data and cool tools that we have in the background to really open up the profession into things that we can't quite imagine today. So it's almost like this flowering of the profession because we are crossing the hurdles of psychology that hinder people to accept these wild probabilistic models that they perceive today.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Dev. Richard, how about yourself? And then let's go to Clive.
Yeah, mine's a bit of a hybrid of the previous three, actually. We've got the advent of quantum computing. We've got deep learning that provides us with insights that are beyond our comprehension, and therefore we see them as counterintuitive. And therefore, you know, we've got some cognitive barriers to run through. Personally, right now, I'm excited about being able to develop tools that can see things that we can't see. And therefore, the process we've got to come round to changing our way of thinking.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Clive, how about yourself? And then we'll go to Catalan.
Okay, thank you. I think if I had to go down to one thing that I took out of this, it's the increasing, I didn't realise how much more information we could get from satellite technology. And I think that is, that kind of started to blow my mind about all the sorts of things you could do with that. Not necessarily focusing on tailing dams, which we both don't particularly like, do we? That's the first thing. The second thing was just coming back to Dev. I'm currently very interested in sort of behavioural management, and I think it touches on certain ethical quandaries as well. And I think we might, as a profession, have to wrestle with that sort of thing, especially if we go into the psychology and doing nudge theory and things like that. So, yeah, all very, very exciting, really interesting.
Thanks, Clive. Catalan, how about yourself? And then we'll go to Rodrigo.
Yeah, just a couple of short things. I think in terms of on the topic of making risk relatable, sort of innovations that relate to data visualization or anything that makes risk jump out to an audience, to a C-suite, so they understand messages, because I think maybe sometimes risk isn't communicated very well. So to the extent where you can offer visualization, I know that exists. I think that's a very important innovation. But another sort of on a completely different topic, you know, the biggest problem on the planet today is climate change and climate change risk. So in terms of technologies that, you know, help innovations that help predict, you know, where disasters are going to happen, you know, maybe further into the future, I think those would be very important. Those would be really good to have.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kathleen. And Rodrigo, how about yourself?
I think that the big innovation for this whole bunch of sections that we have is the recognition of our values as humans. I think that the technology will always be an enabler and will facilitate many of our discussions, but recognize the power that we have to think differently and create different words, and that the future is open. I think it's something that will enable us to train better risk managers, and in my case, students, and enable us to see the challenge that we have ahead of us, being climate change, being digital, from a more holistic and integrated perspective, recognizing that there are multiple interests and there are many unknowns that needs to be uncovered and understood more deeply. So it requires this critical thinking, this challenge of assumptions. And I think that that has been proven throughout this this amazing forum. Thank you, Sarah, Sartarla, all the RIM members that collaborated. It has been a wonderful event.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. And thank you very much to our wonderful panelists and all of our speakers from today. Just to round up, because I know that we've now hit 6 o'clock UK time. Massive thank you from Rose, myself, and the rest of the organising team. Just to throw some statistics or numbers out at you, because of course some of us like those. So over the course of today, we've had 17 different sessions, which included 2 panels. We've had 16 different speakers. We've had hundreds of people who have been dialing in and listening into all of the different talks through the course of today. I think something that I found really exciting, and I haven't done the analysis yet in terms of which sectors different people come from, but in terms of our speakers, we had 2 from Australia, 1 from India, 2 from Denmark, 7 from the UK, 3 from Brazil, and 1 from the USA, which even just from a country perspective, I think brings in some form of diversity of thought, if nothing else, which I think was really exciting to see. Just by way of the Institute of Risk Management Innovation Special Interest Group, the way that we work is it is free to join. It is a membership group, but we will welcome you with open arms if you're not a member for your first few sessions, so you can see if you like what it is we've got to say. Over the last 6 to 9 months or so, I don't know, I have lost track of time totally with the whole COVID thing. We've been working or focusing in on digital and what does that mean in terms of moving risk management forwards. And this is the culmination really of a lot of the internal discussions we've been having. We've had a whole series of other talks within the group as well. And what we'll be doing now is moving on to our next theme, which is where we look at risk management and responsibility. So how can risk management be a tool or a mechanism to increase or enhance or empower responsibility within an organization? Now, you can interpret responsibility in any which way you like. Does it mean sustainability? So therefore, does it fit nicely with things like COP26, which I have a ticket to, which is quite exciting. So if anybody has any questions you want me to ask of the powers that be, then feed them through. But so that means there that we'll be building on a lot of what we've been learning over the last 9 months or so and say, okay, let's now apply that innovative thought to that world of sustainability. Now, if you would like more information on the IRM Innovation SIG, after we finish the conference later on today, and I think this email might come out tomorrow rather than tonight, because I think Rose and I may need to go and do something else with our time for a few hours. We will send out an email that will give you links to where to go and find not only the recordings from today, but also a whole host of other materials. If you want to get in contact with us with regards to the IRM Innovation Group, then please do feel free to do so as well. I also have a note here from Satala, which I will shamelessly make a pitch for. So Satala is my organisation, but it has been the Satala team that sat behind an awful lot of the organisation today. And some of them were truly inspired by some of the comments around, actually from Mike Tunstall, and where he was getting risk appetite to actually work inside the organisation. Now, they've said that if anybody wants to come on a risk appetite, tolerance and criteria training course where we look at what can you get machines to do and what do human beings need to do with regards to it. So it's very much a workshop. There is a course that's happening on the 14th and 15th of October. And we'll give you 50% off is what the team says. We'll include that in the email as well, because I think the poor people who are coming on that training course are going to be bombarded with ideas from today as well. So if people are interested in all of that or getting access to a whole load of other materials that are freely available, do feel free to get in touch as well. So with that, it is now 5 minutes past 6. I think that is still within our tolerable range of running ever so slightly early or late, but I'm going to call it to a close. Thank you so much, everybody who's been involved today, and all of our fabulous questions coming in from our attendees. We do, of course, do weddings, birthdays, parties. Feel free to get in contact with us, especially Mark and Jane. But with that, thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely rest of your Wednesday and your rest of your week. Thank you very much.
See you, everyone.